The next topic we'll discuss when talking about network security is the use of TCP wrappers. Now, TCP wrappers are used to provide additional security to services running on your box across the network that network hosts can access. Now, note that this is not the same thing as a firewall, although some people understand that it is, and it does provide some similar functions to a firewall, but not even all of those functions. It actually does a few other different things. In addition to running TCP wrappers, yes, you also need a firewall. You do need both of those because they fulfill two different functions. In some cases, the functions may be a little bit similar. Now, TCP wrappers, you essentially don't have to do anything to install it. It's enabled by default if you run inetd with the dash capital W, little w flags, but it should be run by default because that is the way the inetd starts up by default unless it's changed. If you've passed different flags to it in etcrc.conf, then that may change, but it should be enabled by default. Now, what TCP wrappers does depend upon is the proper configuration of the etc hosts allow file. Now, we talked about etc hosts allow in that is the file that's used to allow or deny certain hosts from accessing the services offered in inetd. Other programs can also use hosts.allow if they want. Now, host.deny, you may see that in discussion about TCP wrappers, but host.deny is deprecated and is no longer used. You may see it in older Linux or Unix implementations. Now, there's some options that we can use with TCP wrappers, and again, all these are configured in host.allow, and those include the twist and spawn options. Now, twist is an option where an unauthorized user attempts to access a service. That unauthorized user is listed in host.allow, and there's a deny statement there. Twist will send a message back to them saying, hey, you're not allowed to use this service. Spawn also disallows them to use the service, but instead of sending a message back to them, it actually can execute scripts on the box that can take measures in the event of an attack. So you've got those two options there. Let's go ahead and take a look at etc host.allow, and we can just go through some of the options that are listed there, kind of give you an idea of how that file is configured for TCP wrappers. Okay, we're in our FreeBSD virtual machine, and what I'd like to do is go ahead and type in less etc hosts.allow, and let's take a look at this file. And as I said, this is primarily where you're going to have configuration that will affect TCP wrappers. Otherwise, there's not really much configuration to it. As we go through here, this is basically a default host.allow file, and it says at the top, allows access control for TCP wrapped applications. So basically, you have to know which application you're going to wrap. So you have a daemon, an address, and an action. And what that means is basically you're going to say which daemon or service you want to allow or deny access to, and to what address, and whether it's an allow or deny. So if you go through here, there's a few different options you can look at, basically, such as RPC bind. We show here RPC bind coming from any address or going to any address is denied. And you might want to put things in here like FTP or Telnet or SSH. You might want to restrict access based upon host names and IP addresses to those. You might want to say, okay, only addresses that are inside the local network can access those services, whereas anything outside of the local network on the internet cannot. So you would have to do a restriction that basically had based upon the network number. And you can see some of the examples that are given here in the host.allow file. You even see an example here of the fingerd command, and basically spawn, the option here, and how that's configured, and also twist. So you can see how you can use those with TCP wrappers to either send a message to an unauthorized user in the case of twist, or to run a script as spawn does if there's an unauthorized access for a particular service. So basically you just have to configure TCP wrappers in the etc host.allow file. It may be a little tricky until you get the hang of it, knowing which service and what action and from how to put the host name or IP address in there, because in some cases you may be dealing with more than one host name or more than one IP address, such as an entire subnet. So that can be a little tricky. And also you can use the examples here for spawn and twist to basically figure out how to configure those for particular services for TCP wrappers as well. So that's just a quick down and dirty on TCP wrappers, what it does and where it's configured.